In the imperial capital of Shengjing, two princes wed on the same day, with crimson wedding processions stretching 10 li down the Grand Boulevard. No one could have predicted that this spectacular double celebration would end with the brides having switched places entirely. Me childhood sweetheart, the man who had promised me forever, had orchestrated this elaborate deception with his own hands, all to legitimately marry the woman who held his heart. The entire city was in uproar, everyone lamenting how he had wronged me, turning the Song family's century-old reputation into a laughingstock. Little did they know, beneath my red bridal veil, my lips curved in a smile both bitter and relieved, for through this absurd mix-up I had somehow found myself wedded to the jade-like gentleman I had secretly adored for years. Red candles burned bright, and auspicious symbols adorned every window frame. Draped in elaborate phoenix coronet and ceremonial robes, I felt as though my very bones had been extracted, leaving me limp against the carved canopy bed. It was the lingering effect of a sleeping draught that left me without strength to lift even a finger. Creak, the heavy chamber door opened slowly from without, letting in the cool autumn night air. Through my thick red veil, the world became a hazy blur of shadows and light. I glimpsed a tall, elegant figure in matching crimson wedding attire, stepping carefully across the red carpet toward me. His frame was slender, like a solitary bamboo standing proud against winter winds, his movements deliberate yet graceful, just like the noble scholar trees that, though growing in ordinary courtyards, cannot conceal their inherent melancholy and solitude. He approached and stopped before me. I sensed his hand rising, perhaps to lift the veil that concealed my face. That hand hovered in the air for what felt like an eternity, as if held by invisible threads, never quite descending. Even through the red silk, I could feel two burning gazes studying me intently, as if they could penetrate this thin fabric and see straight through to my soul, exposing all the absurdity beneath. After a long moment, that hand finally lowered. He did not lift my veil. Instead, he turned decisively and walked to the nearby couch. I heard the rustle of fabric as he lay down fully clothed, his back to me, in complete silence. In that moment, by the flickering candlelight, I recognized that silhouette. He was not my betrothed Su, he was the 6th prince of the Sheng kingdom, Su Yu. Today had indeed brought double joy to the kingdom, with two princes marrying simultaneously. Prince Su Yu was to wed the concubine-born daughter of the Minister of Rites, Zhu Qinqin. Prince Su Yi was to marry the legitimate daughter of the Grand Tutor's household, myself, Song Zhao. Su Yi held an exalted position as the Empress's own son, pampered from birth and destined for the throne. Mi Song family had stood firm in court for centuries, filled with scholars and gentlemen of principle. Fortune tellers even proclaimed, the Song family has a daughter whose fate marks her for Empress. As the only legitimate daughter of this generation, I had been groomed from birth according to future Empress standards. His Majesty had long since decreed my betrothal to Su Ye, joining our two houses in matrimonial alliance. However, everything changed a year ago. At the Minister of Rites' birthday celebration, his concubine-born daughter, Zhu Qin, accidentally fell into the water and was rescued by the passing 6th Prince Su Yu. Upon awakening, Zhu Qinqin seemed like a completely different person, her temperament utterly transformed. She abandoned her previous timidity and began speaking outrageously, treating social conventions as nothing. She proclaimed ideas of equality for all and freedom above all, yearning for one heart, one love for one lifetime. The capital's noble ladies treated her words as afternoon entertainment, recounting her behavior to me with great relish. I maintained a composed exterior, but secretly felt a twinge of envy. I thought she was truly alive, truly right. Compared to this caged songbird that I had become, she was free. I heard her clever hands could craft fragrant soaps, beautifying skin balms and vibrant rouge. What a brilliant and extraordinary woman she was. Fate played its hand when Su Yi, through several encounters with her, became utterly captivated by her rebellious nature. Like a lovesick fool, he rushed before His Majesty demanding to break our engagement and marry Zhu Qinqin as his primary consort. Naturally, the emperor gave him a thorough tongue-lashing. For several days, Su Yi seemed bewitched. He even stormed the Song residence with his betrothal token, attempting to force our engagement's dissolution. The entire capital waited to see my humiliation. They said the Song daughter's imperial dreams were surely over. All those years practicing palace etiquette and imperial protocols had been for naught. Yet I felt oddly indifferent. After all, neither that man nor that position had ever been what my heart truly desired. Just then, Su Yu also stepped forward, petitioning His Majesty for Zhu Qinqin's hand. This sent the capital into greater uproar, as if watching a grand theatrical performance. Su Yu lacked powerful maternal relatives, and had even been sent as a hostage to the Chu kingdom for 4 years of hardship. Later, he coordinated inside and outside forces, leading cavalry to crush the Chu capital in a decisive victory. Unfortunately, that battle left him gravely injured with wounds that would never fully heal. This effectively eliminated Su Yu from contention for the supreme throne. His Majesty harbored complicated feelings of guilt toward him. Unsurprisingly, to compensate his 6th son, the emperor granted the marriage between Shu Yu and Zhu Qinqin. When Su Yi learned this news, he went mad, kneeling before the palace of mental cultivation for 3 days and nights without food or water until he collapsed unconscious. Upon awakening, he suddenly changed his tune, no longer causing trouble. He requested His Majesty's blessing for our marriage, specifically asking to wed on the same day as Su Yu people in the capital. Speculated that Su Yi was competing with his brother, trying to outdo his younger sibling in wedding grandeur. Others suggested Su Yi harbored resentment toward Zhu Qinqin or remained hopelessly infatuated. Everyone guessed wrong. He intended to use that chaotic day to execute his bride-switching scheme. The wedding attire, coronets, and sedan chairs were all managed by the Ministry of Rites. Using ministry oversight as an excuse, the garments and coronets meant for early delivery to the Song household were deliberately delayed until the day before the wedding. Reflecting now, the embroidery patterns and style of my wedding dress clearly matched Su Yu's ceremonial robes. They were obviously meant as a coordinated pair. This was clearly intentional, planned well in advance. The moment I entered the sedan chair, I detected an unusual fragrance, followed by weakness in my limbs from the sleeping draught. Unable to speak or move, I became a marionette. Throughout the sedan journey, altar ceremony, and heaven worship, the wedding attendant had to support me through every ritual. That attendant was undoubtedly one of Su Yi's planted agents. Now, leaning against the bedside, my thoughts gradually cleared. Unconsciously, drowsiness overcame me, and I dozed off in that position. When I next awakened, I found myself properly positioned in bed, with covers tucked around me. The red veil still covered my face, obscuring my vision. I tested my fingers and found the drug's effects had largely worn off, my strength mostly restored. Removing the veil, I took a deep breath of relief. Leaving the bed, I tiptoed to the nearby couch. By the faint morning light, I observed the still sleeping Su Yui couldn't resist, crouching down for a closer look. His features were exquisitely beautiful, refined as a painting. Even in slumber, he emanated an aura of cool detachment that kept others at bay. How laughable I still envied Zhu Qinqin, not because Su Yi was infatuated with her, but because of this man before me. Su Yui had harbored feelings for Su Yu for many years. Due to that fortune-teller's ridiculous prophecy, I had been brought to the palace as a child to learn tedious court etiquette. The Empress wanted to exploit the Song family's influence while simultaneously fearing our power. making my life difficult at every turn. Those days were filled with endless palace walls and inexhaustible protocols and feminine virtues to memorize. Only the occasional zither music from the imperial gardens corner accompanied me through those difficult evenings. Once I gathered courage to follow that music. It was my first encounter with young Su Yu. Though just a boy, he already possessed striking bearing, his expression marked by cool pride, like a solitary lotus atop a snowy peak. Seeing me hiding behind a crimson pillar, watching him shyly, he didn't scold me. Instead, he gently asked if I was homesick. That day, he took me to climb the highest palace wall. Standing there in the strong wind, I could see the familiar Song family residence beyond the palace walls. He became my first and only friend in the imperial palace. That highest palace wall became our unspoken secret refuge. Later, lacking maternal protection, he was sent as a hostage to the Chu kingdom. After that farewell, I never saw him again. But I often climbed that wall alone. I could see the Song residence, but could never glimpse the distant Chu kingdom. Whether in the deep palace or later back at the Song household, I would deliberately seek any news about Su Yu. Hearing of his humiliation and difficulties in Chu made my heart ache. Learning of his divine military leadership that destroyed Chu filled me with secret joy. News of his severe injuries during the return journey kept me sleepless. I understood that revealing such feelings would implicate the Song family and harm Su Yu. So I kept these emotions carefully hidden, buried deep in my heart. I constantly reminded myself that I was Su Yi's rightful betrothed, the future empress of this kingdom. Now, quietly observing Su Yu's sleeping face, my feelings were impossibly complex. Did he know his bride had been switched? He clearly knew His Majesty disliked Ju Qin, yet insisted on marrying her despite offending both the emperor and Prince Su Yi. He had even sacrificed his distinguished military achievements for this union. Su Yu must truly love Ju Qin. Lost in thought, Su Yu's closed eyes suddenly opened. Our gazes met at mere inches apart, close enough to hear each other's breathing. I scrambled to my feet in panic, stepping back several paces. "Miss Song, this." His voice carried morning raspiness, eyes flashing with surprise before understanding dawned. Su Yu said no more. Such an intelligent man would instantly grasp, as I had, that this was Su Yi's manipulation. Just then, urgent, frantic knocking echoed from the door. "Your Highness, Your Highness. Palace messengers have arrived. His Majesty summons both of you to court immediately." Su Yu and I barely had time to change from our conspicuous red wedding attire before rushing to the palace carriage. Before even entering the hall of mental cultivation, I could hear His Majesty's thunderous rage accompanied by shattering porcelain. Inside the hall, Su Yi, Ju Qin, and the usually dignified Empress knelt on the floor. Su Yi and Ju Qin had changed clothes, no longer wearing yesterday's wedding garments. Judging by Ju Qin's satisfied expression, they had clearly consummated their marriage the previous night. Upon seeing me enter, the Empress lunged toward His Majesty's feet like grasping at salvation, abandoning all dignity as she sobbed, "Your Majesty, this situation isn't irreversible. Song Zhao remains Ye's legitimately wedded primary consort. Let Ju Qin serve as a secondary consort. I'll personally explain matters to the Song family. No, this son wants only Qin as princess consort. Apart from her, this son wants no one else." Su Yi stubbornly protested. He turned toward me with feigned guilt. "This son has wronged Zhao, but this son has only one heart." Smack! The Empress furiously slapped him in her rage. I knelt silently, my voice clear and resolute. Such humiliation is unbearable for this subject, as is the dishonor to the Song family's century-old reputation. Today's bride-switching scandal had surely spread throughout the streets, becoming the capital's laughingstock. Su Yi had discarded me, his original betrothed, like refuse into another man's bridal chamber. This was ultimate disgrace for both myself and the entire Song household. His Majesty kicked the Empress aside and delivered several harsh blows to Su Yi, causing him to grunt in pain. After venting his fury, His Majesty calmed slightly and addressed the silent Su Yu, sixth son. What is your position on this matter? Su Yu remained composed, as if detached from the situation, replying respectfully. Yesterday, this son was intoxicated and unconscious, committing no impropriety toward Miss Song. This matter stems from Second Prince's reckless behavior. Since Second Prince and Miss Ju have established marital relations, he should apologize to the Song family. Observing this, my heart ached slightly. Su Yu maintained his usual serene detachment, skilled at concealing all emotions behind that mask of cool indifference. Even with his marriage maliciously manipulated and his beloved woman sharing another man's bed, he endured this affront while preserving dignity. His Majesty pondered momentarily, his gaze sweeping over the kneeling figures before sighing. Must the entire realm witness our imperial family's disgrace because of this unfilial son? Turning to me with softened yet commanding tone, we have always cherished Zhao Zhao like our own daughter. We still hope Zhao Zhao will join the imperial family as our daughter-in-law. We have more than just Su Yi as a son. I understood His Majesty's implication. He wanted to legitimize this situation by having me marry Su Yu, publicly declaring this a destined match rather than Su Yi's calculated scheme. This served not only imperial dignity, but primarily protected Su Yi. It was simply favoritism toward Su Yi, fearing the Song family's wrath might harm his precious son. Your Majesty, this matter represents the imperial family's wrongdoing toward Miss Song. Such hasty decisions are truly unfair to her. Su Yu suddenly interjected, his quiet words crystal clear. This statement left me bewildered, my heart skipping a beat. Was Su Yu protecting me, or did he simply not want to marry me? His Majesty's gaze turned cold, carrying imperial scrutiny. Would Miss Song consider marriage to Yor a grievance or injustice? Imperial authority pressed down like mountains. How could I possibly refuse? Taking a deep breath, I kowtowed. This subject willingly accepts marriage to Prince Yu without complaint. Su Yu and I sat in the return carriage. The atmosphere felt stifling as Su Yu watched me, several times seeming ready to speak. Your Highness, what did you wish to say? I finally broke the silence. Miss Song, do you blame me? Su Yu's question puzzled me greatly. Your Highness is also a victim. How could I harbor such misplaced resentment? Su Yi's machinations clearly hurt him as much as anyone. If he had discovered the deception earlier last night, perhaps there might have been opportunity for remedy. If I hadn't drunk so much yesterday, if I had detected the scheme sooner, there might have been salvageable options, Su Yu said, while deliberately avoiding my gaze, looking toward the window. Was Su Yu expressing regret? Regretting his failure to lift the veil earlier, missing the chance to reclaim Zhu Qingqin? Your Highness, do you regret this? I asked, feeling as though my throat was stuffed with cotton, bitterness spreading through my chest, knowing the answer would hurt. I still foolishly asked. Just as he was about to respond, our carriage stopped at Prince Yu's mansion gates. Whoa! The driver's call interrupted our conversation. Thinking this way, I suddenly didn't want to hear his actual words. Before he could speak, I hastily lifted the carriage curtain, passed him by, and walked straight through the mansion gates. Reaching last night's bridal chamber, the old steward hurriedly approached with obvious difficulty, saying he needed to relocate me to different quarters. My accompanying maid immediately bristled with anger. If the princess consort doesn't occupy the main courtyard, where else would she stay? This is bullying. I restrained my maid, feigning reprimand, while compliantly following the steward to new accommodations. I understood perfectly. I wasn't Su Yu's chosen bride, naturally unworthy of occupying the main courtyard, symbolizing the mistress of Prince Yu's mansion. Following the steward through winding corridors, we entered a secluded side courtyard. Though less grand than the main quarters, everything here exuded refinement and charm. The courtyard garden even featured a zither platform, its arrangement reminiscent of that imperial garden corner where I first encountered Su Yu. More surprisingly, the courtyard included an extremely tall tower. Climbing to its top and opening the windows, I discovered a clear view of the Song family residence and distant glimpses of the majestic imperial palace. Me heart stirred as I asked the accompanying steward, "Why build such a high tower in the mansion?" "This old servant doesn't know this courtyard was constructed years ago on His Highness's personal instructions." Su Yu's instructions? Pondering this deeper meaning, guards rushed in reporting palace messengers waiting in the main hall. I adjusted my attire and entered the main hall to find it filled with various precious treasures, gleaming brilliantly. Su Yu sat composedly in the principal seat, expression detached. The leading palace lady approached with smiles, presenting ornate boxes to both Su Yu and myself, explaining these were special rewards from their majesties as consolation, truly striking with one hand, while offering sweets with the other. Such was imperial manipulation. I opened my box as instructed, finding a neatly folded white handkerchief. This is also a reward. I wondered if this handkerchief was woven from some rare material. Su Yu glanced over, his expression shifting slightly. He quickly reached out with cool fingers, taking the handkerchief from my hand and returning it to the box, covering it. I noticed his ears had turned suspiciously red, his speech becoming somewhat unnatural. "It is not exactly, it is just some old palace customs." I saw the palace lady covering her mouth, eyes twinkling with knowing amusement. Suddenly understanding the handkerchief's purpose, it was for virginity verification. My face instantly burned crimson like evening sunset. I couldn't help stealing glances at Su Yu, who had shed some of his usual coldness for a touch of scholarly elegance and youthful charm I'd never seen before. This expression vanished instantly as he regained his composed, ascetic demeanor, as if that previous shyness was mere imagination. Su Yu cleared his throat, stiffly changing subjects with formulaic gratitude toward imperial grace. After dismissing the palace lady, I held the burning hot box and returned to my courtyard. Just as I sat down, my maid secretly handed me a letter saying Su Yi had sent it through trusted agents. Unfolding the pages revealed lengthy expressions of guilt, claiming his betrayal was unavoidable due to circumstances, promising to repay my devotion in future lives. Reading this letter, I found it utterly ridiculous, even nauseating. From the moment Su Yi petitioned His Majesty for our marriage, he had calculated every move. Where was any unavoidable necessity? He simply couldn't bear watching Zhu Qin marry another and suffer, so he unhesitatingly pushed me into the storm's eye, making me the entire capital's laughingstock. Now, with everything settled, he hypocritically spoke of future life devotion. Such behavior, wanting benefits while maintaining reputation, was laughably transparent. This was merely to avoid Song family resentment, while preserving old affections for future succession struggles. I sneered, about to summon my maid to burn this letter, when Su Yu suddenly entered. This unexpected development startled me into dropping the letter, hastily hiding it behind my back. Su Yu's sharp gaze immediately caught my clumsy concealment. "What is the princess consort holding?" Seeing no escape, I began fabricating wildly. "Nothing special. Just a family letter from the Song mansion mother, inquiring about my well-being." "Oh, a family letter?" Su Yu raised an eyebrow, continuing his approach. "My oversight with recent complications. I should have accompanied you to the Song residence for proper explanations." As Su Yu drew nearer, I panicked, fearing he'd see the letter's contents. I unconsciously retreated step by step. Accidentally stepping on my long skirt hem, I tumbled backward. Su Yu reacted swiftly with excellent reflexes, extending his arm to pull me into his embrace, preventing an ungraceful fall. Me face pressed against Su Yu's chest through the fabric. I clearly heard his strong, rapid heartbeat. Thump, thump. That sound seemed enchanted, leaving me bewildered with burning cheeks. His hand around my waist felt warm, heat penetrating through thin fabric. Princess consort, are you all right? Su Yu's low, magnetic voice carried concern near my ear. I awakened as if from a dream, quickly releasing my grip on Su Yu's clothing and reluctantly withdrawing from his embrace. Only then did I realize my hands were empty. Where was the letter? While secretly searching for where I dropped it, I saw Su Yu bending to retrieve the fallen letter from near his feet. The unfolded paper revealed Su Yi's familiar handwriting. I knew he'd seen it. So this is the princess consort's so-called family letter. Su Yu's voice instantly chilled, carrying self-mockery and disappointment. It is not what you think I can explain. I was about to burn this letter. I desperately tried to clarify, but words failed me. Me decade-plus engagement to Su Yi was fact. Our childhood bond was fact. Nearly marrying him was ironclad fact. Who in the capital didn't know of my complicated history with Su Yi? With this letter as evidence, any explanation seemed pale and powerless. Princess consort needn't panic, this marriage was accidental anyway. People ultimately cannot expect too much. Su Yu placed the letter on the table, expression returning to familiar distance, then turned and left. That retreating figure conveyed indescribable desolation. People cannot expect too much. Did he mean I shouldn't expect his trust, or he shouldn't expect my genuine affection? Perhaps if deep love was impossible, mutual respect might suffice. That evening, under moonlight like water, I stared at the box containing the white handkerchief. Me heart held none of the day's embarrassment, only wave after wave of sadness. I turned to extinguish the candles and retire for the night. Half asleep, I vaguely heard the door opening. Thinking it was a servant adding tea and water, I opened my eyes to moonlight revealing Su Yu's familiar silhouette. Your Highness? I called out in surprise. He was arranging bedding on the nearby couch with practiced efficiency. Sorry, did my movements wake you? His voice was soft with apology. I hadn't expected Su Yu to come tonight after the day's events. Why did your Highness come? After speaking, I wanted to slap myself. The question sounded unwelcoming. Newlyweds sleeping separately would create gossip harmful to your reputation, Su Yu explained while finishing his bed preparation. Then, as if fearing misunderstanding, he quietly added, just sharing quarters. For appearances, I won't force you into anything unpleasant. Was he thinking what I thought he was thinking? I quickly dismissed such notions. Prince Yu was such a refined, principled gentleman. How could he harbour improper thoughts? However, even the mansion's luxurious couches seemed cramped for a man of Su Yu's stature. Your Highness, shall we switch? You take the bed, I'll take the couch, I suggested sympathetically. Unnecessary, you are a woman requiring comfort. Sleep well, Su Yu gently refused with finality. Then we could share the bed together. The words escaped before I could stop them. Instant silence followed, with even outdoor insect chirping clearly audible. Me face burned as I hastily added, the bed is large enough for both of us, and we are husband and wife. Sharing a bed is normal. My voice grew progressively quieter until barely audible. I cursed my lack of restraint. Would Su Yu think me too forward, especially after today's love letter incident? Embarrassed, I pulled the covers over my head like an ostrich, hiding completely. Su Yu loved Ju Qin. How could I forget such a crucial detail? This was utterly humiliating and presumptuous. Until shadow fell across my head, blocking moonlight through the covers. Su Yu stood bedside with his bedding, seemingly smiling faintly. "Then please, dear wife, make room." Hearing this, I quickly scooted inward while clutching my covers, pressing against the wall. Su Yu lay on the outer side. That night I slept fitfully, occasionally stealing glances at Su Yu beside me. Watching his peaceful profile, I unknowingly drifted off. Waking the next morning, I found myself alone, but covered with Su Yu's bedding from the previous night. My original covers had somehow been pushed into the inner corner. I usually slept well, perhaps recent exhaustion had made me restless. This pattern continued for several days. Su Yu caught cold from sleeping near the draught, coughing for days. I apologized profusely, feeling terribly guilty. Su Yu merely smiled warmly, saying this was natural between spouses, requiring no excessive concern. Days passed, but the capital remained rife with gossip. Tea houses and wine shops buzzed with tales of the prince's bride switching scandal. The noble ladies who once fawned over me as future empress now mocked me as the discarded Princess Yu. Their words cutting deep, as if insulting me could curry favour with the newly favoured consort Zhu Qin. Soon news came of Zhu Qin's pregnancy. Temporarily, she basked in unprecedented favour, while Prince Yi's mansion received endless visitors. However, the Empress proved a difficult mother-in-law. Already disdaining Zhu Qin's humble concubine birth and inability to bring powerful family support, she now used the pregnancy excuse to install several young, beautiful concubines for Su Yi. Hearing this news still shocked me. Su Yi had once risked everything for Zhu Qin, deceiving the Emperor and Empress, orchestrating bride switching, yet couldn't deliver the promised one heart, one love for one lifetime. Reportedly, Zhu Qin flew into rages at the mansion, actually beating several concubines to death in her fury. For this woman who preached equality for all, such ideals became empty words when her own interests were threatened. Imperial banquets always served as arenas for various power struggles. Zhu Qin and I inevitably became walking focal points at such gatherings. Previously, as Su Yi's betrothed, these occasions were unavoidable. Now, as Su Yu's consort, with Su Yu claiming illness and staying home, I naturally attended to his health, declining most invitations. However, today's imperial palace banquet was absolutely unmissable. Upon entering the banquet hall, a shrill, grating voice reached me. Looking up, I saw Zhu Qin's legitimate elder sister, Zhao. Before my marriage, she'd always envied my engagement to Su Yi, considering me a thorn in her side. Being intellectually inferior, she'd consistently failed against me, harbouring deep resentment. I heard the Empress recently considered installing her as Su Yi's secondary consort to balance Zhu family influence. Now she'd finally found opportunity to mock this fallen former fiancé. Naturally, she wouldn't easily let it pass. Oh my, some people actually believed childhood jest promises and truly considered themselves special. What happened? Still ended up discarded like garbage into someone else's arms. Her loud voice drew surrounding guests' attention. I knew her implications but didn't want to waste energy arguing with such a fool, preserving my dignity. Seeing my silence, she assumed I was intimidated and grew bolder. I also heard about a maid nearby who married a sickly invalid. This poor bride might become a widow within months. These words pierced like poisoned thorns into my heart. Cursing me was acceptable, but cursing Su Yu was not. I took a deep breath, suppressing my rage, and walked calmly to Zhao's slap. I delivered a crisp, resounding slap. The banquet hall fell instantly silent. "You, how dare you hit me?" Zhao shrieked in disbelief, covering her face. "I am the Emperor-appointed Princess Yu, a first-rank imperial daughter-in-law. You, a mere minister's daughter, speak insolently and disrespectfully. publicly cursing imperial princes. Do I not have the right to discipline you? I ignored Zhu Zhao's twisted expression, sweeping the surrounding noble ladies with commanding authority. Your Highness speaks wisely, the lesson is deserved. The ladies chorused, lowering their heads under my imposing presence. Using one to warn others, such tactics I'd mastered perfectly during my palace years. Zhu Zhao covered her swollen face, glaring venomously. Song Zhao, don't get too comfortable. After tonight, just wait. Oh, threatening me, tonight would clearly not be peaceful. The Empress wanted her as Su Yi's secondary consort, but the Minister of Rights absolutely refused to have legitimate and concubine daughters marry the same man, improper and dangerous. For this plan to succeed, what legitimate reason could force the minister's household to agree? I glimpsed Zhu Qingqin in the crowd, surrounded by admirers. She seemed less spirited than usual, pale-faced, one hand supporting her slightly rounded belly, eyes complex. I deliberately raised my voice, sneering, "Tonight, I am eager to see what waves you'll manage." Indeed, Zhu Qingqin's gaze toward us sharpened with calculating ruthlessness. She'd heard and apparently approved. I smoothed my sleeves, ignoring them, and returned gracefully to my seat. After the banquet began, Su Yu sat beside me, using his wide sleeves to discreetly squeeze my hand. He whispered, "I heard you had conflict with the Zhu family's eldest daughter." Su Yu always acted low-key and tolerant. I didn't want him involved in women's disputes or implicated. She spoke too harshly. I couldn't restrain myself. "Sorry for the public scene," I explained quietly. Su Yu gently shook his head, interrupting, "Don't apologize. It is my inability to protect you from such slander. Next time anyone dares disrespect you, let the guards handle it. Don't dirty your own hands. Though I lack power, I can still protect my own wife." His quiet words rang with determination. Looking into Su Yu's clear, resolute eyes, warmth flooded my heart, mixed with dense heartache. I knew his disfavor in the palace, those 4 years as hostage, requiring constant vigilance. Finally earning military merit cost him health and throne prospects. His journey had been endlessly difficult. "Thank you," I smiled, eyes growing moist. "We're one as husband and wife, sharing honor and disgrace. No thanks needed." Husband and wife as one, hearing these words. I smiled bitterly inwardly. Months married, yet we hadn't even consummated our union. Despite sharing beds nightly, Su Yu showed no such intentions, never making improper advances. Cooled those rumors about Su Yu's severe injuries, affecting not just his body but his masculine capabilities, actually be true. My gaze toward Su Yu became complex, mixing guilt with inexplicable sympathy. I watched that unfamiliar young palace maid accidentally shake her wrist, spilling red wine across Zhu Zhao's cloud-patterned silk dress in spreading stains. Zhu Zhao rose accordingly, covering her skirt and following the maid to change clothes. This performance was crudely obvious, yet effectively efficient. Su Yi noticed and moved to leave, but his sleeve was firmly grasped by Zhu Qingqin. Her usually bright face was now pale as paper, forehead beaded with cold sweat, crying out about unbearable abdominal pain. The Empress panicked, hastily summoning physicians as the grand hall descended into chaos, elegant entertainment becoming farce. When Zhu Qin slightly recovered and looked around, Su Yi's seat stood empty. She violently pushed away the examining physician, hair disheveled, eyes filled with venom as she glared at the Empress on the high platform. Then a trusted palace maid hurried to the Empress, whispering urgently. The Empress's expression shifted before she composed herself, finding trivial excuses to hastily end this ridiculous banquet. That night, deep palace walls concealed countless undercurrents. The next morning brought no imperial edict announcing Zhu Jiao's marriage to Su Yi instead. News spread throughout the capital that Zhu Jiao had been elevated to imperial concubine status. Hearing this, I nearly dropped my teacup, utterly amazed. I turned to Su Yu reading by the window. Such a bizarre development. Could this be Zhu Qin's handiwork? Does she possess such heavenly connections? Su Yu turned a page, expression remaining unperturbed. Perhaps, in the deep palace, who can say for certain? Zhu Jiao entered the palace, gaining favor through beauty and affected innocence, even daring to challenge the Empress multiple times using imperial preference. Soon she was promoted to noble consort rank. Unfortunately, such unprecedented fortune proved as fleeting as dream bubbles. Before long, Zhu Jiao was accused of attempting to poison His Majesty and was swiftly executed. The Emperor's health suffered, suspending court sessions indefinitely. Palace politics shifted dramatically as succession matters were postponed, requiring selection of a regent from among the princes. Ministers argued endlessly, with Su Yi and Su Yu receiving the strongest support. However, before the regent was chosen, disaster struck. Su Yu suffered severe injuries in an assassination attempt while returning to his mansion. Su Yi naturally assumed regency powers. Every discerning person in the capital knew who orchestrated those assassins, yet for maintaining court dignity, they were labelled Chu Kingdom remnants, and the matter was hastily closed. Su Yu's injuries were grave. Several blade wounds cut to the bone, especially an arm injury that nearly crippled the limb. Seeing those horrifying wounds, my nose stung with unshed tears, yet Su Yu comforted me instead. Merely surface wounds that look frightening, no need to worry. Tears filled my eyes as my medicine bottle holding hands trembled, carefully applying medication before wrapping with clean white gauze. When my fingertips touched his skin, I felt his body tense momentarily. The temperature was abnormally hot. "Your Highness, do you have fever?" My heart tightened. Number Su Yu avoided my gaze. Voice deep. "The abdominal wound is somewhat deep. I can manage myself without troubling you." He attempted to take the medicine bottle from me. I instinctively held tight, gazing at him through tearful eyes. Are my bandaging skills too clumsy, causing pain? Su Yu stared at my tearful appearance, obviously stunned, his eyes darkening. "Not that," he sighed. "I fear exhausting you." Using his uninjured hand for support, he leaned back slightly, his loosened garment revealing a strong chest, rising and falling with his breathing. I lowered my head, concentrating entirely on treating his abdominal wound. The skin beneath my fingertips burned unnaturally, like red-hot iron. Fearing I might hurt him, I moved with extreme gentleness, fingertips barely grazing his muscle texture, while carefully avoiding those vicious scars. A deeply suppressed groan came from above. Me hand shook as I looked up hastily. Did I press too hard? Su Yu's Adam's apple bobbed, his voice impossibly hoarse with indescribable allure. "Number, please apply more pressure." This tone was far too suggestive, making my ears burn red. I was thinking improperly again. "Princess Consort, why is your face so flushed?" I looked up into Su Yu's seemingly upright yet unfathomable eyes, feeling completely flustered. Perhaps I didn't sleep well last night and have a slight fever. "You should apply this medicine yourself. I'll summon the physician." I hastily shoved the medicine bottle into his hand and fled like a startled rabbit. Behind me came what sounded like Su Yu's low, pleased chuckle. I patted my burning cheeks, cursing my vulgar thoughts. Even if Su Yu weren't gravely injured, he was famously noble and pure. How could he share my base considerations? From then on, changing Su Yu's dressings became entirely my responsibility. Every deep night by flickering candlelight, alone with Su Yu in one room, I inevitably noticed his slightly open collar, revealing elegant collarbones and glimpses of defined abs that seemed to hook my wandering gaze. How had I never noticed this proper prince's improperly loose clothing? Each time I changed his dressings, his seemingly pained groans disturbed my composure greatly. Once staring at his abs, I actually had a nosebleed. Fortunately, Suyu didn't suspect, earnestly inquiring about my health. "Your Highness, perhaps you should handle the dressing changes yourself from now on." After my second embarrassing nosebleed, I finally told Suyu. Suyu looked at me, silently lowering his head with obvious dejection. "The abdominal wound is manageable, and others have scabbed over. I need not apply medicine. With current court complexities and mansion surveillance, those I can truly trust are precious few." His usually cold voice now carried hints of helplessness and grievance. My heart instantly softened. Yes, he faced countless difficulties with Su Yi watching closely. I shouldn't be so petty. "Your Highness, let me continue helping with the medicine. I was inconsiderate. I truly deserved death for spurning such a wounded man." Within just over a month, palace physicians came in waves, ostensibly for treatment, but actually investigating Suyu's injury status. Court officials also sent multiple persuasion delegations, pressuring Suyu to return, despite his injuries, to assist Suyu's regency. Suyu finally succumbed to this multi-pronged pressure, dragging his injured body back to court. He spent days handling accumulated governmental affairs and nights attending His Majesty's bedside. I hadn't seen him for many days. Today the palace suddenly summoned me with the Empress's oral decree. I understood perfectly Su Yi's mediocre abilities had caused repeated failures during regency, while Su Yu, despite injuries, handled affairs expertly with growing influence. The Empress was desperate, targeting me as her avenue of attack. But as a minister's wife, I couldn't refuse. Arriving at Jingran Palace, I found Ju Qin present as well. She'd grown much thinner, that child ultimately couldn't be saved. The Empress didn't particularly trouble me, engaging in bland small talk before dismissing me. The palace corridor was long and shadowy. I encountered Su Yi approaching. Rather than a chance meeting, he'd clearly waited here deliberately. I suppressed disgust and performed proper court etiquette. Unexpectedly, he stepped forward, grasping my wrist with shocking strength. "Zhao, I've written you so many letters. Why haven't you replied to any?" I struggled fiercely, trying to break his grip. "Prince Yi, please show restraint." Su Yi, being martially trained, was much stronger than me, his eyes gleaming with fanatical light. Zhao, trust me, I am about to ascend the throne. Once I am emperor, I'll dismiss the 6 palaces and make you empress." Knowing I couldn't provoke this madman, I forced composure. Where would that leave Ju Qin? Naturally, she'd be the noble consort ranking just below you. Zhao, I need you now. Need the Song family's support. You must help me." Did Su Yi love Ju Qin? Yes, but compared to supreme power, such love seemed insignificant. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "How do you want me to help?" Just then, a figure rushed from the corridor's end. Ju Qin? She stared fixedly at Su Yi's hand gripping my wrist, jealous fire nearly erupting from her eyes as she charged forward, pushing me backward. "Song Zhao, don't you pride yourself on noble breeding and childhood lessons in propriety? Publicly embracing another woman's husband, have you no shame?" Ju Qin's curses were vicious as she raised her hand toward my face. That descending slap was steadily caught by a pale, slender hand. Didn't sister-in-law also learn propriety from childhood? She too once embraced another's betrothed quite intimately. Moreover, without establishing right from wrong, you'd strike first. Su Yu had appeared behind us unknowingly. His face was coldly stern as he roughly released Ju Qin's hand, stepping forward to pull me toward the palace exit. "Su Yu," Ju Qin's shrill voice echoed behind us. "I am sorry about the bride switching. But you can't give up on yourself, carelessly choosing Song Zhao. You should select someone you truly love for life. My steps halted abruptly, heart feeling violently struck. I didn't know how much of my conversation with Su Yu had overheard, nor his thoughts. Leaving the palace gates, I tried explaining, when Su Yu spoke first, voice cold as ice shards. Song Zhao, let's divorce. I panicked instantly, tears flowing uncontrollably. Is it because of Su Yi? I can explain I never replied to his letters. I desperate to clarify, Su Yu interrupted decisively. No, because of Ju Qinchin's words. I don't want to continue living carelessly. I was speechless, throat feeling cotton, stuffed and painful, so marrying me was also careless in his mind. I couldn't shamelessly prevent Su Yu from pursuing his true life companion, just as I'd once hoped to marry someone whose heart and eyes held only me. I forced tears back, nails digging into palms, managing a smile. Very well, then let's divorce. I held the ink-fresh divorce papers and returned to the Song household. Su Yu publicly declared his old injuries had worsened, fearing imminent death without wanting to burden me with lifelong widowhood. Marrying him had been an accidental mistake. Divorce merely corrected the error. Returning to Song residence, parents and brother treated me as always without hint of disdain. But I'd lost my spirit entirely, becoming silent and withdrawn. Odd days later, shocking palace news emerged. Physicians discovered His Majesty hadn't been poisoned with ordinary toxins, but deadly Chu Kingdom poisons, and Su Yu had spent 4 years as hostage in Chu Kingdom. This mud naturally splashed toward Prince Yu's mansion. The Imperial Guard's first search target was Prince Yu's residence. The mansion was sealed, Su Yu imprisoned. Hearing this news from my sister-in-law, my embroidery frame crashed to the floor. I knew this was deliberate framing, someone trying to destroy him completely. Disregarding everything, I visited former friends, spending most of my dowry jewelry to finally gain prison visitation rights. In that dark, damp dungeon reeking of decay and blood, I saw Su Yu in filthy prison garb, lying on straw with multiple reopened wounds. Bloody and unrecognizable, no trace of that elegant, noble prince remained. Hearing sounds, Su Yu painfully opened his eyes, seeing me with surprise that turned to anger. "This isn't where you belong, Miss Song. Leave immediately." "I know," I gripped the bars tightly, weeping. "I fear this might be my last time seeing your highness." Tears blurred my vision. These past days I'd begged everyone possible. But with walls falling and people scattering, no one could help, nor dared risk themselves for a treasonous minister. I'd even swallowed pride to approach Su Yi and Ju Qin, only to be denied entry to their mansion. "Since you've seen enough, go home and give up." Su Yu turned away, voice completely cold and distant. "Su Yu," I called his name, voice trembling yet firm, "I've loved your highness for many years. If your highness truly dies this time, I'll follow you in death." I feared never having another chance to speak these words. Since I couldn't marry my beloved for shared mornings and evenings, at least accompanying him in death required no permission. "Miss Song, you needn't." Su Yu seemed shocked by my words, turning to look at me. Before he could finish, I covered my face and fled the dungeon. I feared hearing his rejection, feared having even this final delusion shattered. I'd secretly written final letters to parents and siblings. Hidden in my jewelry box's bottom, unexpectedly, Su Yu's fate took a dramatic turn. Border reports suddenly arrived. 100,000 Chu troops had appeared under Great Chu Restoration banners, achieving overwhelming victories against Sheng forces. Court ministers proposed that Su Yu, having lived in Chu Kingdom, understood their military tactics and customs, suggesting he lead forces for redemptive service. This suggestion perfectly suited Su Yi and the Empress. Victory meant Chu elimination and state security, while they claimed credit. Defeat meant Su Yu's battlefield death, sparing them fraternal murder accusations. When I heard my brother mention immediate deployment, I went completely blank. Su Yu was barely healed with fresh torture injuries. They clearly never intended his survival. When I stumbled to the capital outskirts, that mighty army had long departed, leaving only settling dust. I'd failed to see Su Yu one final time. During Su Yu's months campaigning, I lived like a marionette, constantly pestering father and brother for battle news. Every report was surprisingly positive. Chu forces retreating with imminent victory expected. During this period, the capital experienced another major event. Princess consort Ju Qin died of illness. She specifically requested meeting me before death. That once arrogant woman now lay skeletal and dying. She said she'd loved someone she shouldn't have. Su Yi loved her, but that love was possessive and restrictive. Su Yi loved too many things: power, status, reputation. His heart was too crowded for her love to matter. She wasn't dying. She said she was finally free. Su Yi's love was heavy chains locking away her entire life. The Empress repeatedly invited me to palace banquets. Her intentions were obvious. She hadn't given up wanting me to marry Su Yi. With His Majesty unconscious and Su Yi's regency facing civil service ridicule, forced succession would face enormous resistance. With father leading civil officials, my becoming empress would ensure paternal support for the new emperor, despite reservations. With Su Yu campaigning and grain supplies controlled by court, I dared not offend her for Su Yu's sake. Such diplomatic maneuvering was my specialty after 15 years of practice. Finally losing patience, the Empress found pretexts to confine me in the imperial palace. One evening, I evaded guards to climb the palace's highest wall. Surveying the scene, the entire capital was draped in white silk with paper money, filling the air. Funeral bells told His Majesty had died. Simultaneously, battlefield reports arrived, Sheng victory, but Prince Su Yu had perished in battle. I clutched the cold wallstones, swaying precariously. The Empress and Su Yi had truly killed the donkey after it pulled the millstone, crossing the river, then destroying the bridge. Below the wall, civil and military officials in mourning garb knelt blackly before the palace gates. At the forefront knelt my father and brother. They shouted demands for investigating His Majesty's true death cause, retrieving Prince Su Yu's remains for proper burial, and establishing a virtuous new ruler. Officials repeatedly cried out with earth-shaking voices, but the palace's vermilion gates remained sealed, coldly blocking all sound. They knelt thus for 3 days and nights. Finally, the palace's heavy gates slowly opened. Emerging weren't welcoming servants, but thousands of armed, murderous imperial guards. The Empress, dressed in mourning yet radiating malice, approached the kneeling officials. I was forcibly escorted by 2 maids behind her. Beloved ministers, is this forced palace rebellion? The Empress's voice was shrilly sharp. Civil and military officials continued their protests without retreating. Seeing this, the Empress sneered coldly, fixing her venomous gaze on my father, leading the civil officials. Grand Tutor song, treason carries 9-generation execution. Would you watch your daughter and entire song lineage suffer such bloodshed? Father straightened his spine, white-bearded yet unbowed. The Song family has served loyally for generations. Even in death we die righteously, never compromising our principles. Hearing this, the Empress turned livid, drawing a dagger from her sleeve, its sharp point pressed against my throat. Excellent righteousness. Since the Grand Tutor is so noble, let's begin with Song Zhao as sacrifice. In that moment, I felt no fear. With Su Yu dead and Song family integrity insulted, I'd never live to become their weapon against father. I closed my eyes, preparing to thrust myself upon that blading. Several stones flew through air, precisely striking the dagger from the Empress's hand, numbing her grip and making her cry out while retreating. I and everyone stared amazedly toward the stone's origin. Atop the city gate, that silhouette standing against the light in battle armor, it was Su Yu. He was alive. Simultaneously, tens of thousands of elite troops surged like tide, instantly surrounding the entire imperial city. Palace walls suddenly bristled with countless archers, arrow points gleaming coldly at the imperial guards. Seeing this scene, the Empress went ghostly pale yet maintained her final breath, sneering, "Excellent, Su Yu, you've also rebelled. Since we're all dying, let's take these full court officials to accompany me in death." "Empress, stop this delusion," came an aged yet authoritative voice. Everyone was shocked. His Majesty, supported by attendants, slowly ascended the palace wall. Beside him, bound and ashen-faced, was Prince Su Ye. His Majesty wasn't dead. This was all an elaborate trap. The Empress collapsed without fighting, her ridiculous power grab finally ending. I stood in cold wind, watching that blood-stained, armored figure approaching step by step. I had countless words for him about his injuries, his schemes, my longing, but remembering those divorce papers and his words about not living carelessly, I ultimately stopped myself, having no standing to approach. Finally, I silently supported my aged father and brother, returning to Song residence. The Empress and Su Yi faced irrefutable evidence of poisoning His Majesty and murdering loyal subjects, imprisoned for treason. Prince Su Yu, having rescued the Emperor and quelled rebellion, was formally named Crown Prince. His Majesty, grateful for Song family loyalty and integrity, again issued marriage edicts for Su Yu and myself. Seeing that imperial yellow scroll with our names written together, my heart filled with bitterness. Su Yu must be quite troubled now. After everything, he was still forced by imperial decree to spend life with this unloved one. Hearing the crown prince had come bearing betrothal gifts with great ceremony, father asked if I'd meet him in the main hall. I claimed illness and didn't go, unsure how to face him. That evening under moonlight, I just extinguished lamps when soft sounds came from the window. A black shadow nimbly entered before I could cry out, a warm hand covering my mouth. Familiar ambergris mixed with medicinal herbs filled my nostrils as I met those familiar deep eyes in moonlight. An old friend, Su Yu. "Your Highness, Crown Prince's nighttime visit to a maiden's chamber. What brings you here?" I removed his hand, heart pounding. "Why didn't you see me today?" Su Yu's voice carried obvious disappointment and grievance. "Improper conduct. Next time this subject will properly receive your highness as protocol demands," I replied formally. Hearing this, Su Yu pulled me into his embrace. Zhao, don't be like this." His sigh softened his tone. "I am injured again, can't reach my back for medicine. Would Zhao help me finishing?" Su Yu began untying his robes. Since Su Yu's assassination attempt, I'd kept superior wound medicine readily available. I treated his back injuries by moonlight as before in the prince's mansion. Su Yu still occasionally groaned as if in pain. Only this time we both knew he was pretending. Despite intimate skin contact, an insurmountable chasm seemed to separate us. No ambiguity existed, only indescribable oppression. This tortured both him and me. Zhao, Su Yu suddenly spoke, voice trembling. "When I said living carelessly was false, I feared defeat would implicate you." Su Yu grasped my hand, turning to face me with blazing eyes hiding emotions. I couldn't fathom. "I know," I lowered my gaze. From his imprisonment shortly after my return home, I'd guessed as much. I tried withdrawing my hand to continue his medicine, but he snatched the bottle, throwing it aside. "Why are you so cold now? Do you not want to marry me?" I remained silent. I seemed unable to read him. Which words were true? Which false? His divorce request to marry his beloved was false, but protecting me from implication was true. Previously, hearing of lifelong companionship would have delighted me. Now I couldn't distinguish whether he wanted to marry Song family influence or me as a person. Indeed, people shouldn't be too greedy. When I looked up again, Su Yu's eyes were red with tears. Whether you want to marry or not, you'll be my wife this lifetime, he said somewhat dominantly, cupping my head and fiercely kissing me. He bit my lips hard with punishment and desperation. This Su Yu I'd never seen gone was gentle refinement, replaced by aggressive intensity like a cornered beast. After kissing, Su Yu dressed and departed through the window, leaving only an inner garment on my bed, proving the encounter wasn't dreams. Soon the wedding day arrived. Gongs and drums resounded. Crimson decorations stretched 10 li. I felt detached, like an outsider mechanically completing ceremonial requirements with Su Yu, though I noticed him occasionally stealing glances beneath my veil, his eyes burning yet restrained. This was my second time in wedding dress sitting on marriage bed, awaiting my husband. Deep night, guests departed. Su Yu entered with steady footsteps, walking directly before me and using ceremonial scales to lift my red veil. By candlelight, he gazed steadily at me, eyes seeming to hold twin flames. Under such burning scrutiny, my face reddened uncontrollably as I lowered my head, fidgeting with my handkerchief. Su Yu watched me long before suddenly setting the veil aside, using his usual cold tone, "Rest early." He turned toward the couch, lying down clothed. This scene mirrored our first marriage night. Exactly. I sat bedside, stunned. Silence filled the room save for sputtering candles. After considerable time, Su Yu's voice drifted from the couch. "Zhao, do you resent me? Knowing you don't want marriage, I still forced you through imperial power into something unpleasant. Actually, when I first lifted your veil, I recognized you immediately. I was pretending intoxication then, just sharing a room with you. Hearing your breathing already made me extraordinarily happy. Now legitimately married, yet only hearing your sighs in our shared room, ultimately my greed bound you beside me, making you unhappy too." Su Yu's tone carried complete desolation and self-mockery. Hearing his confession, my heart's ice cracked piece by piece. I don't know what made me so bold, perhaps seeing the white verification handkerchief on the marriage bed. I took the handkerchief, walking to Su Yu's side. He sat up in surprise. I placed the handkerchief in his cool palm, face burning, voice mosquito soft. "We still have things undone." Su Yu stared at the handkerchief momentarily before laughing bitterly, eyes dimming. "Such things. You don't like them, at least. Not with me." "How do you know I don't like them?" I boldly sat beside the couch, gathering courage to smile charmingly. "Your Highness isn't me. How can you know my heart?" Su Yu stared at me intently before his eyes blazed like consuming fire. He suddenly pulled me into his arms, pinning me beneath him. Su Yu's warm breath brushed my ear, voice deep and hoarse with regained joy. "Then let's try see if Zhao truly likes this or not." Red curtains fell, concealing the spring scene within. Number epilogue. Su Yu, my mother, died early, leaving me a transparent nobody in this vast, cold imperial palace. To survive, I learned to hide my abilities, maintaining courteous distance from everyone and everything. Until that year when I first met second brother's future little princess consort. The Song family's youngest daughter, obviously still childish, yet forcing herself to act mature. Being slow with protocols, she was often punished to practice palace etiquette in the imperial gardens corners. When alone, she'd secretly wipe tears with red nose. Once people passed, she'd immediately dry her eyes and resume stern composure. Even crying, she was adorable. Once lost, she ran behind a pillar at my zither platform, peeking out timidly like a lost fawn watching me play. Thinking she missed home, I stopped playing and took her to the palace's highest wall, pointing out the Song residence's direction among distant rooftops. Her eyes instantly brightened. From then on, she frequently climbed that wall whenever possible, occasionally sneaking to the zither platform to hide behind pillars, listening to my music. Watching her grow daily from an adorable little dumpling into a graceful young lady, I discovered my feelings had fundamentally changed. For the first time in my life, I felt insane jealousy towards second brother. Why was she his later for larger purposes? I volunteered for Chu Kingdom hostage duty. This was enormous gamble and long-planned state strategy, but I needed this opportunity. I needed distinguished military service and iron-blooded personal forces. Only then could I compete for what I wanted. 4 years in Chu Kingdom, walking constantly between life and death. Countless times teetering on survival's edge. Only memories of that small figure gazing from city walls sustained me. I finally returned with glory and bargaining chips, thinking I had capital to compete with second brother, but seeing her again standing beside him, laughing harmoniously like a perfect couple. When speaking with me, she always lowered her head respectfully, appearing extremely uncomfortable. My heart died. Some things can't be forced. Some relationships once missed remain missed. I never expected that rescuing the drowning woman Zhu Qinqin at the Minister of Right's birthday banquet would trouble Zhao so greatly. Zhu Qin was manipulative, flirting ambiguously with second brother while sending me suggestive letters. Such a fickle woman entering Prince Yi's mansion, even without becoming primary consort, would eventually trouble Zhao. So I made a decision. I petitioned His Majesty to marry Zhu Qinqin. Since I could never marry Zhao anyway, anyone was the same, just decoration. Moreover, if I married Zhu Qinqin, Zhao's future situation might improve with one less threat. On our wedding day, I was heavily intoxicated at the banquet. I knew this was second brother's intention to humiliate me, but I accepted all drinks readily. I had no intention of touching Zhu Qinqin anyway. However, when I impatiently lifted the veil, my pupils contracted sharply. By candlelight, that panicked face was actually Zhao. I instantly sobered halfway, knowing Su Yi and Zhu Qinqin's shameless behavior would involve schemes, but never imagining they'd dare attempt bride switching. After ecstatic joy came deep self-loathing. I quickly lowered the veil, pretending intoxication while collapsing on the couch, taking no further action. As if this could conceal my base, greedy secret delight. That entire night, listening to her steady breathing, I stayed awake until dawn. I'd resolved never to take advantage of her vulnerability, planning to let her leave to marry someone she truly loved if she wished. Yet circumstances pushed us together. She ultimately became my princess consort. Unexpectedly, I could house the rightful mistress in that highest tower I'd specifically built for myself. From there, she could see her beloved song residence and face the imperial palace that would define her future. When I intercepted Su Yi's first letter to Zhao, I was mad with jealousy. So every subsequent letter from Su Yi was mercilessly intercepted and burned to ash. Sharing beds with Zhao to avoid harming her, I'd push aside her covers to squeeze into one bed with her, just to be closer. The cost was nightly cold baths after enduring warm fragrance in my arms, daily wind chill infections earning physician lectures. Later I discovered Zhao was quite innocent, easily flustered by minor teasing, so I began deliberately appearing disheveled daily. While she applied medicine, I deliberately groan in pain, intentionally making her blush, constantly stirring her heartstrings, even using despised beauty traps. If it made her look at me once more, it was worthwhile. Later, Zhao was bullied at the palace banquet by Su Yi's new marriage prospect. How could I tolerate that? I easily arranged for that woman to marry Father Emperor instead. In this harem, someone of Zhu Qinqin's caliber was no match for the Empress. Only redirecting disaster higher up could keep Zhao safe. Then His Majesty was poisoned. Knowing the Empress would desperately attack me, I spoke cruelly to force divorce for Zhao Zhao's protection. I knew Zhao Zhao's character, learning the truth. She'd share life and death with me, but I couldn't gamble on this. With my prison fate uncertain and unable to protect her, only returning to Song residence under the Grand Tutor's protection could keep her safe. In that sunless dungeon corner, I heard Zhao Zhao tearfully confess loving me for years. That moment should have brought ecstatic joy, melting my heart. But reason demanded not harming her. I could only suppress heartache with cold indifference, forcing her departure. In prison, I'd arranged everything. I had my people pose as Chu troops, creating border crises while using planted agents to force officials' recommendations, compelling Su Yi to relinquish military authority for my campaign. Before departing, I received Father Emperor's secret message about palace control by the Empress, ordering secret royal rescue operations. Away for months, I publicly reported only victories while secretly controlling all Shang Kingdom military networks. I needed absolute certainty and Zhao Zhao's complete safety. Only when His Majesty faced mortal danger did I appear, ensuring the Empress and Shu Yi committed unforgivable crimes beyond redemption. Finally, everything settled. I could legitimately, honorably marry Zhao Zhao. But Zhao Zhao seemed unwilling. Despite exhausting all tactics, window climbing, playing weak, seduction, she remained distant. Had I truly broken her heart beyond repair? Was love truly gone? I'd promised never forcing her into unwanted situations, yet this short life made me ultimately selfish, compelling marriage. Rare entering the bridal chamber, lifting the veil again, seeing her avoidant eyes filled me with regret. Perhaps people truly shouldn't be too greedy. My greed trapped her like me within these red walls without happiness. Until, when she held that white handkerchief sitting beside the couch, blushing while smiling at me, I heard flowers blooming. In that moment, I felt she permitted my greed. This life was sufficient.